Hi, I'm Sarah and welcome to Rich Textures Crochet on YouTube. Let's crochet something beautiful today.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah of Rich Textures Crochet and welcome. Today we are going to learn how to crochet the sprig stitch, which is the stitch that you see here before you. And unlike other fans and shell stitches, the sprig stitch is a little bit more dense, creates a little bit more of a solid fabric, but it's still quite pretty to work up. The stitch is comprised of single crochet stitches and chain stitches. So if you're a beginner to fans and shells, this is a great stitch to start with. Thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let's grab a hook and some yarn and let's get started. So today for the sprig stitch, you are going to need a foundation chain with a multiple of 4 stitches plus 3. So make your slip knot. Make a foundation chain with a multiple of 4 stitches plus 3. Today I'm going to start by chaining 19. (10, 11, 12, 18, and 19. Once you have your desired length of starting chain, you're going to start by placing 2 single crochet stitches in the 4th chain from your hook. So count in from your hook, there's 1, 2, 3, and in that 4th chain, you're going to place 2 single crochet stitches. Chain 2, and work 2 single crochet stitches in the next chain. Skip the next 2 chains and work 2 single crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, and work 2 more single crochet stitches in the next stitch. You're going to repeat that all the way across. Skip the next 2 stitches. In the next stitch, work 2 single crochet stitches, chain 2, 2 single crochet stitches in the next stitch, skip the next 2 stitches, work 2 single crochet stitches in the next stitch, chain 2, and 2 single crochet stitches in the next stitch. So continue to repeat that all the way down the length of your chain. When you come to your final 2 stitches, you're simply going to skip the next stitch and place 1 single crochet stitch in that final chain. For row 2, you are going to begin by chaining 3 stitches. You will now work your sprig stitches by working in each of the chain 2 spaces all the way across. So you're going to skip all the stitches in between. You've chained your 3. In that next chain 2 space, you are going to work 2 single crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 more single crochet stitches, all in the same chain 2 space. Skip the next 4 single crochet stitches, and in the next chain 2 space, work 2 single crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 more single crochet stitches. Continue to repeat that all the way across. In the next chain 2 space, work 2 single crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 more single crochet stitches in the same space. In your next chain 2 space, work 2 single crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 more single crochet stitches. When you come to your final starting chain 3, that turning chain, you're going to work 1 single crochet stitch in that turning chain. For the rest of that pattern, this pattern, you are simply going to repeat that row 2. So start by chaining 3, turn your work, and work your sprig stitches in those chain 2 spaces. So 2 single crochet in the next chain 2, then chain 2, followed by 2 more single crochet stitches. Repeat that all the way across. In the next chain 2 space, work 2 single crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 more single crochet stitches. So you're going to have these V stitches, these single crochet V stitches, all lining up. They're always worked in your chain 2 spaces. When you come back to your starting chain 3 there, don't forget to place 1 final single crochet stitch in that starting chain 3. Then chain 3, turn your work, and you're ready to start all over again. Thank you so much for joining me on this tutorial on how to crochet the sprig stitch. Until next time, happy crocheting. Bye!
I'm Sarah, and welcome to Rich Textures Crochet on YouTube. Let's crochet something beautiful today.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah of Rich Textures Crochet and welcome. Today we are going to learn how to crochet the Elizabeth stitch, which is this stitch that you see here in front of you. It creates a very textured fabric, as you can see here, and it's unique in its sort of crisscross diagonal appearance that you see. It is a double-sided stitch. So it looks the same on the front as it does in the back. It can be worked in a variety of projects, from accessories that you would wear to accessories for around the home, such as blankets and washcloths and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for joining me. While you're here, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I like to update it weekly with free crochet patterns and stitch tutorials. Grab a hook and some yarn and let's get started. So for the stitch today, you are going to start by making a foundation chain, and your foundation chain, the multiple is going to be an even number of stitches plus 4. So a multiple of 2 plus 4 stitches. Today my swatch will be a total of 20 chains. There's 5, 10, 15, and 20. So once you have your chain your desired length, you're going to start by working your first Elizabeth stitch, which is similar to a puff stitch with a slight variation. You're going to work your first Elizabeth stitch in the 4th chain from your hook. So from your hook, count in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where you're going to work your first stitch. To work the Elizabeth stitch, you're going to start by inserting your hook into that 4th chain. You're going to yarn over and drop a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook. You're then going to yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch, yarn over, and drop a loop. You will now have 4 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on your hook. You'll be left with 1, and you're going to chain 1. That's all there is to the Elizabeth stitch. Next, you're going to skip the next chain, and work your next Elizabeth stitch in the following chain. So insert your hook, yarn over and drop a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over and drop a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, draw your yarn through all 4 loops and chain 1. That's your second Elizabeth stitch completed. You're now going to repeat that all the way across. Skip the next chain. In the next chain, work 1 Elizabeth stitch. Insert your hook, yarn over and drop a loop. Yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over and drop another loop. Once you have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops and chain 1. Continue to work that all the way across your chain. Skip 1, then work an Elizabeth stitch. Skip 1, work an Elizabeth stitch. When you come to your final chain, you will work your final Elizabeth stitch in that chain. I'm now just working my final Elizabeth stitch in my final chain. I'm pulling through all 4 loops, I'm chaining 1, and then you are going to chain 2, so you'll have a total of 3 chains at the end, and turn your work. Now if you take a look at the row that you've just completed, you will see that you have these little puff stitches all lined up there in a row. For row 2, we're going to continue working our Elizabeth stitches. The first Elizabeth stitch is actually going to be worked at the base of your turning chain in the top of the Elizabeth stitch down below. So you'll see that you have these 2 V's here at the top of your work. Well, if you look under that first V, they'll be, and pull it apart, maybe if your stitches are tight, you'll see a little opening. That's where you're going to insert your hook, not under the chain 1, but in the top of the Elizabeth stitch down below. So you're going to insert your hook and drop a loop, yarn over, insert your hook in under the same stitch, yarn over and drop a loop. With 4 loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over, pull through all 4 and chain 1. That's the first Elizabeth stitch. Your next Elizabeth stitch will be worked in the top of the one below, of the next one below. So here's your next Elizabeth stitch here. If you pull it apart, you see that that V there. You're going to insert your hook under the top of that stitch, drop a loop, yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops and chain 1. Find your next one. So on the top of your next Elizabeth stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, complete your next stitch and chain 1. You're going to continue that all the way across. When you come to your final Elizabeth stitch, you will work your final stitch into the chain 3, the beginning turning chain 3. I'm coming up on my last and final stitch, my chain 1. So I find my turning chain 3 right here, insert my hook, and that's where I work my final Elizabeth stitch. And that's always going to be the case for each and every row. You complete your stitch by chaining 1 and then chain 2 more for your turning chain. Turn your work and you can begin row 3. Row 3 is worked exactly the same as row 2, so now for the rest of this pattern you're just completing what you did in row 2. In the top of the Elizabeth stitch down below, you're going to insert your hook and work your first stitch, chain 1, move to the next Elizabeth stitch, insert your hook in the top of that stitch, work your next stitch, next Elizabeth stitch, and again all the way across. Remember, when you come back to your beginning turning chain, your turning 3 chain, you're going to work your final stitch under that turning chain. As you can see, once you get going, it's a fairly quick stitch to work. It's quite simple, but one that has some amazing results and is quite versatile. Coming to my final Elizabeth stitch here under that chain 3, I'll work my final stitch. End with your chain 1 and then chain 2 more for your turning chain. And that's all there is to working the Elizabeth stitch. Thank you so much for joining me on this stitch tutorial on how to crochet the Elizabeth stitch. Once again, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you. Until next time, happy crocheting. Bye.